Release me! I'm not done with me revenge!
All that anger. Who am I to stop you from giving in to it?
So, besides giving us a bunch of puns and a brief history lesson, what exactly did the Miraculous Ladybug New York special have to offer?
Being stuck here a little.
It was angst. It was angst that they gave us. Hello everyone and welcome back to Toon Runes. I'm your host Leah, and it's about time that I get to scream about my favorite disaster show yet again. This time, however, I'm not talking about the wacky production or canned characters. Nope, this time I'm talking about literary themes and writing, which, is going to be rare for me when I'm referring to this show because it's not exactly known for having the strongest writing. I do call it my garbage show for a reason, after all. As myself and many others have stated in my comments section, being a Miraculous Ladybug fan is to suffer. It's part of the experience.
I just have a few medical exams I couldn't postpone because I will soon be having a baby.
That said, something that surprised me about the most recent Miraculous Ladybug special, Miraculous World New York, was that the writing was actually pretty decent. Higher quality than what we're used to in terms of character development, that's for sure. And while there are problems with it, as there is with every piece of media, I wanted to talk more about one aspect of this special in particular, the dynamic between Ladybug and Cat Noir. And yes, I know that this also implies that I'll be talking about the dynamic between Marinette and Adrian, but I really do mean it when I say Ladybug and Cat Noir's relationship is going to be the focus here. Mainly because I find it to be far more important developmentally than the romantic drama happening in the background. If I wanted to watch Marinette fawn to near obsession over Adrian, I can watch any episode of the show at random for that. And while I can't really talk about them and their relationship without at least mentioning their civilian identities, it's not what I found the most complex and the most important of this special. The best and most captivating part of this special, at least for me, was the conflict that comes between our two heroes about mid-movie. Obviously, spoilers ahead if you haven't seen it yet, but I'm sure that you already knew that there would be spoilers when you clicked on this video. One of the main conflicts in this movie is that Marinette is going to New York for a week with her classmates for French-American Friendship Week, leaving Paris without their primary guardian. Obviously, this worries her, since this is taking place post-season 3 after Fu had resigned as guardian and given Marinette that responsibility in his permanent absence. This understandably puts more pressure and responsibility on her as Ladybug, since there's no backup if she fails. At least when Fu was around, he was there to give advice or to hand out Miraculous to other individuals when all else failed, like he did in the episode Party Crasher after Ladybug was captured by an akumatized Wayhem. He's not involved with the Miraculous anymore due to his voluntary amnesia, and so now Marinette is and always will be the final fail-safe, with the exception of Bunnix, of course, who only seems to intervene when their failure is catastrophic enough to become apocalyptic. Tempering with time is a very messy thing, and so is trying to keep up with the in-universe show lore and rules, apparently. Slight jab at the show aside, it's understandable why Marinette would be stressed at the prospect of leaving Paris for even just a day, let alone an entire week. If she isn't there to purify any Akuma that Hawkmoth happens to attack with, he can cause real and permanent damage to Paris. Up until this special, she has always managed to revert it with her Miraculous Ladybug ability, something which, until this special, we learn isn't a luxury that most other heroes have. The cleanup of destruction is a very real thing, and it luckily isn't something that our two teen heroes have to deal with. Anyways, I'm getting a bit off track here. We'll get back to the destruction bit later in the video. First, I want to talk a little bit about how this special portrays the relationship between our two Parisian heroes.
No funny business, okay?
Have I ever struck you as the funny kind? I'm as serious as they get.
So there's a few key differences between this Cat Noir and Ladybug to the show canon Cat Noir and Ladybug. Now, obviously, they are from the same canon, but there are also some very stark differences between how the special and how the show portrays them. This could be because of a slight time skip from season 3 until now, or it could just be a change in the writing team members. But I digress. Cat isn't flirty with Ladybug, like, at all. It's mentioned very briefly at the start after they defeat Mr. Pigeon that he had been romantically pursuing her in the past, but by brief, I mean incredibly briefly, through an offhand comment about roses and color symbolism. If this was your introduction to the series, I doubt very much that you would know he's flirty to the point of being obnoxious at times.
So now I'm offering you a yellow rose because I've looked it up, and yellow represents friendship. Here's to a perfect partnership.
Are you sure yellow roses don't represent jealousy?
No.
Instead of focusing on Cat's romantic feelings for Ladybug, this special zeroes in on the platonic feelings that he has for her as a friend and the bond that they formed because of their partnership. Because while yes, we do know that he still loves her despite the unrequited feelings, he does value their friendship and partnership as superheroes above all else, as he has stated multiple times throughout the series.
I get it, Ladybug. Your friendship means everything to me. You can keep the rose. It goes with your costume.
You need to keep in mind that Ladybug, next to Nino, is technically his first friend if you exclude Chloe. It's a no-brainer that even if there weren't romantic implications between these two, their relationship would still be incredibly important to him. And it's because of its importance that he gets himself and the rest of Paris in trouble, thinking through clouded and panicked judgment. He cares too much about what she thinks of him on a personal level, and it certainly doesn't help that his social skills are kind of a mess and bordering non-existent. This is where we start to dip into the main conflict between Ladybug and Cat Noir. Now, as I mentioned earlier in this video, Marinette will be absent and unable to protect Paris for a week while she's gone. Her plan, instead of coming up with an excuse to stay in Paris, is to make Cat Noir the temporary guardian and sole protector of Paris. Now, while this isn't much different than what they already do since she considers him to be her partner rather than a sidekick, it is her putting more pressure and responsibility on him than normal. Her trusting Cat Noir to watch over Paris and protect it on his own for a week shows that she has a great deal of trust in him and that she feels comfortable enough to leave him alone for an extended period of time with no questions asked. This again shows how strong their partnership is, putting an emphasis on how close of a relationship they truly have. They would trust each other with their lives, and Ladybug would also go so far as to entrust Cat Noir with the safety of the city she has sworn to protect. Their bond is very strong, but it's not unshakable, as we see later in the movie. Initially, Cat promises that he'll take her place as temporary guardian. However, at the time, it was because he wasn't expecting to also be away from Paris. Initially, Gabriel had forbidden him from traveling with his classmates to the United States, telling him that it would be too dangerous. However, Marinette goes to convince him to allow Adrian to attend. And although Gabriel pretends like that's the reason he decided to allow his son to go in the end, it's never good intentions with Gabriel, because being a decent person is just not on this man's agenda. Nah, he decides to allow Adrian to go because he could use him as a cover-up since he was planning on going to New York as Hawkmoth anyways. If there's one thing I hope anyone learned from this special, it's that Gabriel Agreste is the worst father, and the only place he belongs is behind jail bars. And while I would love to rant about this abusive Barbie Ken doll looking ripoff, that's not the point of this video. However, I do have more to say on him later in this little TED Talk as well, so keep that interaction in mind. As well as, well, all the other times he's gotten unreasonably angry with his son. I know it's a lot, but it's kind of important to the point I'm trying to make, I promise.
Letting Adrian go to New York will be simpler than hiding my absence here from him. Besides, this will allow me to continue keeping an eye on him.
So, Gabriel essentially tells Adrian at the last minute that he's going to New York after all, and that there's no excuses to not go since Natalie cleared up his schedule. He honestly doesn't even give him any choice in the matter, since, you know, evil plots and all that. Adrian is kind of conflicted because he wants to go and spend time with his friends, but he literally just made the obligation to Ladybug about protecting the city solo while she was away. However, he's terrified of disappointing Ladybug, so he doesn't tell her. He thinks about it, but Plagg convinces him to act on impulse and be selfish for once. And while Plagg's heart is in the right place, it ultimately only encourages Adrian to act against his better judgment, and he decides that it would be better not to tell Ladybug about his sudden change of plans, essentially leaving Paris at the mercy of Hawkmoth should he decide to attack the weak Paris isn't under their watchful eye. His reasoning and justification behind not telling her is that she cannot be disappointed in him if she doesn't know about him leaving the city temporarily. Now, keep in mind he uses the word disappointment, but his definition of the word is severely warped due to forces outside of his control. Again, more on that later. This all comes to a head once Hawkmoth attacks New York and Paris at the same time, no doubt attempting to distract the heroes from what he's doing in New York. Of course, operating off of the assumption that they're still in France and not in the United States with him. Natalie had stayed back in Paris to become Mayora so that she could create a senti monster to fight Ladybug and Cat Noir, while Gabriel was in New York akumatizing a supervillain by the name of Techno Pirate, turning him into Techlanizer. Unfortunately for him, the two Parisians just so happen to be in the area already, and they join in the fight with Uncanny Valley and Sparrow, two of New York's superheroes. Of course, Hawkmoth isn't the only one who's surprised, as Ladybug is automatically taken aback and frustrated with Cat Noir's unexpected appearance. Her clear anger in this situation is something that deeply hurts and upsets him, and it's what leads to him making a huge mistake. One that, quite frankly, took kind of a dark turn and I wasn't expecting. After rightfully chewing him out for lying to her, she states in a fit of anger that she can no longer trust him. This causes him to become distracted in his movements, and Techlanizer is able to redirect his Cataclysm, forcing him to use it on Uncanny Valley. This, quite literally, for lack of a better term, deactivates Uncanny, which is basically the robot equivalent of death. Ladybug is able to reverse the damage with her Miraculous Ladybug ability, but the damage has already been done from a psychological perspective. Of course, Cat feels horrible over this, and it even leads to Night Owl demanding that both he and Ladybug give up their Miraculous until they leave New York so that they can't cause any more trouble for the local heroes. They instead elect to run away and keep their Miraculous. Understandably so, as they are right not to trust their magic jewelry with some random hero they just met. This leads us to the heartbreaking scene between Cat and Ladybug, where all of these bad decisions made by Adrian come to a head. It's revealed that the Senti monster has disappeared, and so that there's no time to return to Paris and restore the damage caused. Cat, knowing that the lack of his communication is what led to all of this, renounces Plagg and returns his Miraculous to Ladybug. Now, I've seen this scene interpreted in oh so many ways by the fandom. I've seen people call Adrian selfish. I've seen people say he was overreacting. Hell, I've even seen people say he was being manipulative towards Ladybug. However, it's none of those things that we're witnessing here. Sometimes when it comes to Adrian, I wonder if people actually understand his character, or if they're looking for any reason to rip into him just because he gets in the way of Luke and Nett. Anyways, what I see here is a boy in distress over the fact that he literally just killed somebody by accident, even if it was only temporary. I see a boy who is just told by his partner that she no longer trusts him. I see a boy who realizes and understands that part of Paris was destroyed due to his lack of transparency. I see a boy who genuinely believes that the relationship between him and his partner, one of his first and only friends, is irreparable. It's safe to say that next to his father, Ladybug is the most important person in his life currently. He isn't acting irrationally from his perspective. He's acting like an abused child who doesn't understand how relationships work because he's never had a healthy one before. Does this make him renouncing Plagg right? No. Does this excuse him for not telling Ladybug about his unplanned absence from Paris? No. But does it explain why he did it? Yes. Does it make him a horrible, selfish, and manipulative partner? No! He made a mistake that was bound to happen due to his identity and life as Adrian aggressed. What do I mean by this? Well, this is where we take out the magnifying glass and look at the subtext from the material before this took place.
My father's right. I should have never come to New York.
Now, like I said earlier in the video, Adrian's idea of disappointment has been warped due to his abusive relationship with his father. This is further highlighted by one of the main plot points for the Adrian side of Cat in this special, as it's stated pretty much point blank that he needs to develop his relationships and social skills. Nino quite literally at the start of the special calls him a baby chick who doesn't understand even the most subtle of social cues and situations.
I love Adrian, but he's like a baby chick that just started cracking out of his egg. He has a hard time understanding the signals people send him.
Part of his and Alia's goal with Operation New York is to get Adrian to come out of his shell and for him to develop a healthy friendship with Marinette, since the show acknowledges that at this point, they don't really have one. Props to them for acknowledging that, by the way. Their goal is to get Marinette to be honest with herself and others about her feelings, which is also important to the Ladybug arc of this movie. And I know a lot of this video has been about Adrian so far, but I will talk about her too, I promise. Adrian is a sheltered rich boy, having never had contact with other people outside of a business setting. His only friend prior to attending a public school was Chloe Burgoyes, who he only had a connection to due to her being a rich kid with influential parents. And I'm not going to go so far as to say that Chloe was abusive towards Adrian, because I don't think she was even in the slightest. I think she can be a bit pushy with him, but she shows a great deal of care for him, far beyond what she does for anyone else in her life, save for maybe Sabrina on a rare occasion. Nino takes a chance on him and becomes his friend upon seeing that he's genuinely confused and upset, but outside of him, Adrian really doesn't have any other non-business relationships. He even states in The Puppeteer 2 that he really doesn't understand how friendships work, and he thinks that he's a bad friend.
I'm sure I did something to mess up our friendship by accident. I'm so clueless about these things.
With the only meaningful relationships that Adrian has being with his father, his missing mother, Chloe, Nino, and Ladybug, you could see why his knowledge on how things work would be limited. I would argue that while he's on good terms with the rest of his class, he isn't really friends with them. They're more like acquaintances than they are friends. This is even supported by how in the episode Felix, his classmates admit that they don't actually know him very well and that they've only known him for a short time. They're very quick to turn on him and to fall for Felix's trick, proving that they're not really close with him. In other words, Adrian is kind of like that one kid in your friend group who only hangs out with you because they have a mutual friend who invited them. You're not unfriendly with them and you may enjoy their company, but they're just kind of there and you don't know them very well. It's sad to think about, but that's the reality of the situation. Because Adrian has a limited pool of relationship experience to draw from, he applies his experience to all of his relationships. So, for example, if his father reacted in a certain way to a situation, he may think it's likely that Nino would react in a similar way. And this in of itself wouldn't be a problem since trial, error, and experience is how we as humans learn. However, it's a problem because Gabriel is abusive, and so Adrian is drawing experience from his abusive familial relationship with his father and then applying that expectation and anticipation to his other relationships. And how has Gabriel reacted when he's been disappointed in Adrian? Well,
If she really loves you, she'd let you save your mother.
Stop it! Stop it! Stop it!
Cat Blanc, I'm giving you the infinite power of destruction.
in the episode Captain Hard Rock, Gabriel is disappointed with Adrian's piano playing progress, and so he prevents him from seeing his friends at band practice after he had already said that he could go. This is used as punishment and direct consequence of his disappointment. And this is just merely one example.
Father, you promised that I could attend my friend's concert.
Not after that performance you've just given, which is probably due to their influence.
In the episode The Collector, Gabriel throws a massive fit over Adrian finding the Guardian's grimoire, and even goes so far as telling him he no longer trusts him after this one action. And what does he do as consequence? He pulls him from school, socially isolating him as punishment for disobeying and being curious. As he rightfully should be, since, you know, Gabriel literally tells him nothing and even refuses to spend even a fraction of his time with him. He's too busy laughing away while he terrorizes 2 teenagers and hoards butterflies.
How can I possibly trust you again, Adrian?
Sorry. I'll get you another copy.
The book's the source of my inspiration.
I didn't know that. I hardly know anything about you, Father.
You won't be returning to school.
When Adrian confronts Gabriel about him possibly being in love with Natalie and him being okay with having a new maternal figure, he reacts by getting angry at him and leaving him as a consequence, refusing to continue an important conversation they were in the middle of having on the anniversary of his mother's disappearance.
I've noticed how close you and Natalie have become. If she can make you happy again, then, as far as I'm concerned, she's already part of our family.
How could you possibly think such a thing?
Also in The Collector, he literally stages himself having thrown a fit, destroying many things in his office, making Adrian believe that he was akumatized because of him. And he wasn't even angry, he legit just used it as an excuse to akumatize himself and then made Adrian his target. All of this to make Adrian feel bad for his mistakes and feel bad for disobeying him one time. All of these consequences are completely overblown when you look at what he actually did wrong.
Maybe the Collector's already captured him.
You think he'd take it out on his own son?
So now does it make sense that his reaction to be reprimanded by Ladybug was overblown? These aren't even the only cases of abuse. There's lots more, particularly from the episodes Cat Blanc, Simon Says, etc. These are just the cases of Adrian receiving overblown consequences to his actions, but there's plenty more that are just plain outright abuse. Heck, there's even a moment where Gabriel gaslights Adrien in the special. When he comes to collect Adrien after he made it dangerous for him, he makes it feel like it was his fault for going, even though he never asked to go to New York in the first place. He was forced to go. But instead of fighting with his father and staying, he says that Gabriel was right and he goes along with it obediently, as Gabriel has conditioned him to do through years of manipulation and abuse. So when Ladybug reacts in rightful anger due to feeling betrayed, his mind is automatically jumping to the worst case scenario. He knows that he made a big mistake. He's not going to argue with her about it. Not only has Ladybug told him right to his face, but so has Night Owl and Majestia. Night Owl even says that Ladybug's only purpose is to fix his mistakes, which only further rubs salt into the wound. He genuinely thinks that what he did was unforgivable and that Ladybug deserves a better partner. And while she does deserve a partner who won't lie to her, Cat Noir can be that partner. He didn't tell Ladybug because he was afraid she would be disappointed in him, leading to some cruel punishment like Gabriel did when he took the grimoire. That was something that was small, but it was met with harsh and swift punishment. There's nothing there to show that she would react any differently, and so he was scared. In his mind, it was better to take the chance that everything would be fine and that she wouldn't find out. That way, she would have never been disappointed in him. That way, their relationship wouldn't fall apart. Unfortunately, it was due to this way of thinking that he had almost lost her permanently. And Ladybug even finds the reaction of him renouncing Plagg to be surprising, since she never once said that she wanted a new partner because of his mistake. She was disappointed and upset with him, sure, but they're still a duo and she still cares for him even if he made a mistake that hurt her. She just wants him to do and be better. She thought that he knew, but him leaving made her realize that maybe he didn't. And this ties into Marinette's arc about needing to be clear with her feelings to herself and to others. Once Cat comes back after Uncanny returns his Miraculous, she promptly scolds him and tells him never to scare her like that again. She's even honest with herself about not being able to be Ladybug without him as Cat Noir, which is something we haven't really seen from her before in the series. She's usually playfully dismissive of him and both his platonic and romantic feelings towards her, which is just part of their dynamic. But once in a while, it'd probably be a good idea to let him know that she appreciates him. And overall, I think that's the lesson that she learned from this experience. If there's one thing that I really enjoyed narratively from both sides of the love square, it's that Operations New York goals were the same for both Marinette and Ladybug, as well as Adrien and Cat Noir. The goal for Marinette was that she needed to be more open and honest about her feelings. Not only did she admit to herself that she was still in love with Adrien, but she also, as Ladybug, realized how much Cat Noir means to her as a partner. And while she is too late to tell Adrien how she feels before he leaves, she does manage to tell Cat how important he is to her when he returns. Take note of how surprised Adrien is to hear that she still wants to be partners despite his mistake. It almost hurts to see how shocking it is for him to hear, even though it should be a given due to their dynamic. And with Adrien needing to break out of his shell, he does that by hanging out with Marinette. But he also does that as Cat by learning that communication is important, and that not everyone is going to react irrationally to simple mistakes like his father does. That he deserves and is worthy of forgiveness, and that there's room for him to make mistakes and grow from them. A lot of his perfect model boy facade as Adrien comes from that fear, which is why he has such a drastic personality change once he's behind the protection of a mask. As Cat, he has the freedom to be who he wants without consequence from his father, which is why he can be a bit impulsive at times. He's far too restricted as Adrien, which is what has led to his less than elegant alter ego as an outlet for that frustration. In conclusion, this was a natural progression that needed to happen for both Ladybug and Cat Noir. It seems like oftentimes in the series, Ladybug doesn't let Cat Noir know how much he's appreciated. Paris seems to view him as more of a sidekick than an equal to Ladybug, and it seems that New York's heroes viewed him in a similar light at first. This certainly didn't help for his self-image and him feeling expendable, but it's something that needed to be addressed eventually.
Whoa, easy, what are you doing? If you don't tell me what Ladybug is hiding from me, I'm done. You can't do that! Why not? No one will know if I quit. No one will care. I will.
Cat's impulsiveness and unrealistic understanding of their relationship also needed to be challenged, which is why I think this is the best way to go about it, by directly putting them in a situation where the only resolution was to face these issues as their main conflict. That being said, I think a resolution like this came a bit late. This feels like something that should have happened at the end of maybe season 2. This taking place before season 4 just kinda shows that the show has a character development issue. I'm still overall impressed with the quality and direction that they took with this special, but I'm also not sure if it's because my expectations were low. I think only time will tell with that. I also really like how Cat didn't need to redeem himself in order to become Ladybug's partner again. He learned his lesson, and obviously his mistake wasn't done anywhere out of malice. Ladybug knows that he won't do it again and that he genuinely felt messed up about what he did. She doesn't force him to prove himself or anything like that. They just have a quick makeup scene before they need to rush into battle, and that's that. They're still partners, they just had a bit of a hiccup, and the relationship isn't ruined just because of that one mistake that Cat made. It's really good that he didn't need to waste the time on a redemption or anything like that. It just wasn't necessary. What he did was bad, and Ladybug had every right to be mad with him, but it wasn't bad to the point where he needed to redeem himself. I don't really have a good way to end this video off, and I'm afraid that if I keep talking, I'll just end up ranting about how much I love my dumb idiot cat son. So if in the future you'd like to see more videos where I dunk on Gabriel's awful parenting skills, why not subscribe and hit that bell icon to get notifications of when I upload. Special thank you to my top tier patrons: Ambrose Rothwood, Brandon Nunes, The Lovely Ghosty, Carrie Feek, Lee Taylor, and Zachary Ansley. It's because of people like them that I can continue to make content like this, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Have an amazing day, guys.